and managing equipment well. And, you know, those are the skill sets. It's not their understanding of the biology of their soils or their production system or the traditional skills that one would think about. You know, what it takes to be a farmer in America today has really changed, and the skill set of farmers has become divorced from the managing of this biological process, which we call food production. In rural America, people value community and neighborliness and friendship, but as farms get bigger and more homogeneous and more of the control of the capital and the management decisions gets moved to St. Louis or Minneapolis or Kansas City, and you've really just got sort of hired hands out there on the farm, there's an erosion of the richness of the community that shares that space, and a lot of things get sort of lost as a result of that.
My family has been enduring a living hell since this began. I am sure this is what led to my father's recent heart attack. He has been physically and emotionally shattered since this began. It has been heart-wrenching to watch our reputations be destroyed in our own community over something we did not do. I believe that the patenting of crops that extend to the progeny, in other words, the seed that a crop produces, like soybeans here, which cannot be kept controlled or kept separated on our farms, is nothing short of insane.
A lot of people in the industry try and paint a picture that, listen, 60% of our food is, is processed food, has some genetic engineered, product in it, so forget it, it's over. Your resistance is useless. Well, this is nonsense. The vast majority of our foods, the wheat, the rice, our fruits, our vegetables, are not genetically engineered. The vast majority of the food we eat is not genetically engineered. But right now, probably the key issue is the current controversy over genetically engineered wheat.
Even some of the farmers that thought they might like genetically modified canola originally are saying no to genetically modified wheat. We had the Canadian Wheat Board sitting at the table with Greenpeace and the Canadian Health Coalition, the Council of Canadians, and a whole bunch of farm organizations. And they had a news conference to release a letter to the Prime Minister that said, we don't want GM wheat. And that letter was signed by an additional 200 organizations.
Genetically modified wheat is a very, very serious concern for us up in North Dakota, and we have 124 acres of GMO wheat planted in research plots throughout the state. We don't know where those research plots are, although that's proprietary information. So there's already the potential for contamination. If a custom combiner combines some GMO wheat and then goes to combining some non-GMO wheat, the contamination is going to occur. When it does, we'll lose our markets. It's that simple.
What Monsanto told our legislature here in North Dakota was that if they attempted to put a moratorium on the introduction of this wheat, that one, they would pull all of their research dollars out of our state and our universities, which I quite frankly was very happy to hear, and two, they would file a lawsuit against the state of North Dakota for anti-commerce. This was the way that they tried to sell us, the state, a new product.
In the past, there were public institutions that supplied the farmers objective analysis of new technologies.
Universities started playing an important role in asking questions about this back then in the 70s, But soon enough, it was evident that we did not want to have universities asking questions. So there was a big influx of money from industry to support research at universities. And that led to research that was favorable to the development of the industry and publicity that was simply promotional of the technologies.
The reality is that in our land-grant university system, and certainly in the U.S. Department of Agriculture, there's a small tolerance for people doing research that directly challenges the conventional wisdom.
It's ridiculous. You know, the recent work that we've done on the movement of transgenes in corn in the Centers of Diversification was run on $2,000. Compare that to $25 million coming the other way, and exactly my college. And that is the only piece of work that I know is actually happening.
The biotech industry aggressively attacked scientists whose research questioned the safety and impact of genetically modified crops. Renowned scientist Dr. Arpad Pushtai was suspended 2 days after discussing his research that raised questions about the depressed immune systems and growth of rats which had been fed genetically modified potatoes. Cornell University researcher John Losey found that when caterpillars of the monarch butterfly were fed Bt corn pollen in the lab, 40% of them died unexpectedly. His research was denigrated by the biotech industry. Nature magazine retracted Ignacio Chapella's paper after publishing his peer-reviewed work. Biotech enthusiasts challenged the interpretation of his findings.
Biology was a very diverse field of inquiry, but because of the advent of this technology, we are seeing a narrowing down and a trimming off of all those branches of biology just to the benefit of this one side. And I very much want to fight against that. Just as we are losing genetic diversity, we are losing intellectual diversity that we are going to find very, very needed in the future.
The conventional wisdom in the U.S. today is that ag biotechnology is progress. There's not a lot of encouragement for young scientists to carry out research that might raise questions about that basic judgment.
The corporate control of genetic research is not limited to the field of agriculture.
They allowed the patenting of one of the genes responsible for breast cancer. And many researchers who had been working on a cure for breast cancer were no longer allowed to use that gene in their research because another company had patented it and charged them very, very high fees. Some of the major pharmaceutical companies have gone into university laboratories and sued those laboratories and sued researchers who are using the genes that they own. This is probably the largest private takings of what should be the commons that we all own in common that you could possibly imagine. And I think one of the most disturbing economic trends of our times.
While biotech companies take over on an intellectual level, and genetic engineering takes over on a cellular level, multinational corporations are taking over worldwide by consolidating our food supply.
The combination of Kraft and Nabisco creates a real global leader in the food industry. Scale is a real advantage in this industry. As Kraft has proven, it increases both efficiency and effectiveness.
The average citizen doesn't really understand both the momentum and the extent to which consolidation is taking place in our whole food and agriculture system. Just to give you a couple of examples, 80% of our beef products now are being processed by just 4 companies. In seed companies, the vast majority of the seed that farmers plant now comes from just 4 clusters of companies. And what's even more worrisome now is in the last decade, that same kind of concentration has been taking place in the retail sector. And Heffernan now projects that in the next 10 years, all of the food in the retail level in the world will be controlled by 6 retail firms, only one of which will be American, and that's Walmart. Now, that means that increasingly, we're not going to have any choice about what's on the shelves in our supermarkets. What's going to be there is what some broker in a consolidated firm decides is going to return the largest profit.
One of the problems that the biotechnology industry has is that it's done nothing for the American consumer. There's nothing there. There's no genetically engineered food that does anything, no more nutrition, nothing for us. So how are they going to sell this technology to the American people? Well, they've come up with this idea that maybe biotechnology should be sold as the way to feed a starving world.
With world population expected to increase by 2 billion people in the next 30 years, biotechnology could provide an important way to produce enough food.
One major problem with that, the reason why about 800 million people starve every day, and that is a tragic fact, has nothing to do with the amount of food available. Most of these people around the world who are starving used to be farmers, but because of the World Bank and the National Monetary Fund giving huge loans to these countries could no longer allow for subsistence farming. They had to grow expensive export crops back to the first world to pay back those loans. So they kicked all these hundreds of millions of farmers off their farms. They end up in the Bhopals and the Mexico Cities and the Brasilias of the world without money. They no longer are growing their own food, and they're competing for the scarce jobs available in the new industrialization of these countries. They are no longer food independent. They're food dependent.
Amartya Sen, a Pulitzer Prize-winning economist, after a decade of work, pointed out again and again that the problem of hunger is not a production problem, it's an access problem. It's getting entitlement to food, not producing food, that's the problem. We're, in fact, overproducing the major commodities to the extent where farmers can't recover their production costs. And so we have huge subsidies. You know, we have 800 million people on this planet right now who are malnourished in an era of overproduction where farmers can't recover their production costs.
When wealthy countries subsidize their crops, they undercut the markets of developing countries.
In 1994, on Christmas Eve, by the way, for the first time we said, you know what, we're going to try and have international rules on patenting. This was driven, of course, by the United States. And here's what's behind it. If you have gone into a third world country and you've patented a plant or a tree, the United States wants to be able to go back to that country and say, no one in this country, even though this plant originated here, can use it without paying us the patent fee. To do that, they've got to harmonize patent laws around the world. That's really the big prize for the corporations. It's one thing to make sure we're controlling the U.S. market, but if we can take these plants that we've gotten from the third world and make sure that no one in the third world can use them without paying the companies that patent fee, that's the big bonanza for the corporations.
The generalized perception in Latin America, I also think in Mexico, and many other parts of the world also, the new unipolar system has benefited the United States more than it has benefited the minorities of impoverished countries of the world. This is an issue of big concern because there are not so many political alternatives around. We may eventually go back to despotic types of rule that I don't think will help in any way to make countries like Latin America or Africa or Asia progress. We really need compassion for the people in the world that have less.
The resistance to globalization is that it stems from the insights of some people that, you know, the corporations, they want to be able to go in and make the money, but they don't want responsibility when things don't work out.
One of the most ironic parts of the fact that the biotechnology industry is saying that it's going to feed the world is that it has created a new technology called Terminator technology. And this technology is basically a suicide gene that's put into crops, so after one planting, they commit suicide. You cannot save the seed because the seed then is sterile. It will lead to no crops in the next season. There's 15 patents by first world companies on this suicide technology. Can you imagine what is going to happen